The world shattered not with a bang, but with a text message. Imani Hayes, 34, single mother of two, sat rigidly behind the wheel of her aging sedan, the engine running purely for the meager air conditioning it provided in the humid Chicago summer. Her knuckles were white where they gripped the steering wheel, and the raw, choking grief that erupted from her chest was so violent it shook the car. The tears streamed down her face, hot and stinging, blurring the sleek lines of the luxury restaurant parking lot where she had arrived 10 minutes too early. The text, blunt and cruel, had arrived just as she was attempting to smooth down her thrift store dress. Emergency came up. I deeply apologize, but I have to cancel our date. Elias. This was it. Her one shot at a blind date with a man her friend swore was the kindest, most decent billionaire in the Midwest. The kind of stability she and her daughters desperately needed had just vanished. She had sacrificed nearly every remaining cent she had on this night, hiring a sitter and buying this dress, only to be dismissed like a wrong number. The weight of her crushing reality, the eviction notice taped to her door, the maxed-out credit cards, the children huddled in the back seat, felt like a physical force pushing her into the asphalt. "Mommy, are you okay?" It was Aisha, her 7-year-old, her voice small and tight with fear. Imani tried to inhale, tried to formulate a lie, but all that came out was a high-pitched, pathetic sob. Her other daughter, 5-year-old Kira, simply pressed her face harder into Aisha's shoulder, sensing the danger in her mother's uncontrolled sorrow. She needed to pull herself together. She needed to be strong. But how could she when the man responsible for this chaos, the root of every single one of her financial and emotional burdens, was standing directly behind the car, emerging like a specter from the darkening twilight? Her estranged husband, Tyrone, broad and imposing at his ill-fitting blazer, had crossed the parking lot and was staring directly at her, his expression a sickening mixture of smugness and contempt. He must have followed her, waited for her to dress up, only to ruin this moment too. Imani's heartbreak instantly turned into a furious, protective rage. This was the man who had betrayed her trust, gambled away their joint savings, and left her with a mountain of debt, forcing them into this precarious situation. Now he was here to gloat. She didn't have to turn the rearview mirror to know he was there. She could feel his poisonous presence looming over their small car like a dark cloud. He moved closer, approaching the driver's side window, his lips already parted to deliver whatever venomous line he had prepared. The children whimpered softly, recognizing the silent, menacing threat he represented. Just as Tyrone reached her door, a new, unforeseen element entered the equation, slicing through the tension like a laser. From the main entrance of the restaurant, a tall, impeccably dressed man stepped out into the early evening light. He wasn't looking at Imani or Tyrone. He was checking his phone, perhaps responding to his own emergency. But as Imani released one last, agonizing wail of despair, clutching the steering wheel so hard her hands ached, the man looked up. His eyes, the color of clean ice, swept across the scene. The frantic mother, the two small, frightened girls, and the hulking, angry man standing threateningly over their vehicle. His gaze lingered for a long, quiet moment on Imani's face, ravaged by tears and defeat. It was Elias Vaughn, the billionaire who had just canceled their date, and he had witnessed her complete, catastrophic breakdown. Tyrone didn't need an invitation. He leaned down, his face pressing close to the glass, blocking the last sliver of evening light. The smell of cheap aftershave and something vaguely stale flooded the small cabin, making Imani's stomach churn. "Look at you," he sneered, his voice loud enough to vibrate through the window. "All dressed up for some sugar daddy, and he didn't even show. Pathetic, Imani. You really think some rich man is going to want a broken woman with 2 hungry kids and a pile of debt?" His words were designed to pierce, to hurt her in the one place she was most vulnerable, her competence as a mother and her ruined future. He didn't care that his daughters were listening, frozen in terror. He only cared about control. "What do you want, Tyrone?" Imani choked out, wiping desperately at her face with the back of her wrist. "We have nothing left for you to take." "Oh, I know what you have left," he said, the smugness intensifying. "You have desperation, and that's leverage. I saw the eviction notice. I know you're broke. I'll make you a deal, Imani. A good one. Sign over full custody of the girls to my sister, Chantel, and I'll give you enough cash to get out of town and start over. Free and clear." He knew she would never agree to abandon Aisha and Kira, but the mere threat was a hammer blow intended to soften her for his real demand. When she remained fiercely silent, shaking her head, his tone darkened. "Fine. Then you pay me. You owe me for the legal fees I incurred because of your mistakes, and I want half of the little pension money you managed to salvage, even though I warned you not to touch it." Imani felt the cold wave of memory wash over her, a bitter flashback to the night the betrayal became complete. It wasn't just the cheap perfume she'd found on his collar. It was the moment she discovered the empty joint accounts, the forged signatures on loan documents, and the horrifying truth that he hadn't just cheated on her with a woman. He cheated her out of their entire financial foundation, including the pension fund she had been relying on for retirement. He'd even pulled money out of the girl's college savings to finance a reckless business venture that had dissolved overnight. "I warned you not to touch it," he was saying now, the ultimate act of gaslighting, blaming her for the ruin he had caused. "The only mistake I made, Tyrone, was marrying you," Imani whispered, finding a sliver of strength in her renewed anger. "Get away from my car. The girls are scared." His face flushed with sudden, brutal frustration. "You think you can play the victim? I will see you homeless. I will take those children," he roared, and then, with a sickening thud that rocked the sedan, he slammed his massive hand against the roof of the car. The noise was violent and loud. Aisha shrieked, and Kira burst into full sobs. The situation had escalated from a painful argument to a physical threat. In that terrifying second, Imani's only thought was to turn the key and speed away, regardless of the car's questionable state. But just as she was fumbling for the ignition, a shadow fell across Tyrone. A quiet voice, calm and utterly commanding, cut through the escalating chaos. "Sir, I suggest you take your hand off her property and step away from the vehicle. Now." Elias Vaughn, the canceled date, stood less than 3 feet away, not moving aggressively, but projecting an aura of immense, unyielding authority. The sight of the billionaire, his jaw set and his eyes fixed on Tyrone, brought the confrontation to a terrifying, absolute halt. Tyrone recoiled as if Elias had physically struck him. The sheer unexpectedness of the intervention, coupled with the billionaire's calm demeanor, seemed to short-circuit his aggression. Elias Vaughn wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. He simply stood there, radiating the cold, assured power of someone who was not used to being defied. His presence alone was an enormous barrier. Tyrone, ever the opportunist and coward, realized instantly that escalating the situation with this new witness would bring trouble of a magnitude he couldn't handle. "Who the hell are you?" Tyrone demanded, his voice dropping from a roar to a frustrated snarl, though he kept a safe distance. "Someone who noticed your aggressive behavior toward a woman and children," Elias replied, his tone low and level, making the accusation devastatingly effective. "Move along, or I will ensure the police review the security footage of this parking lot incident." That was all it took. Tyrone knew the game was up. With one final, venomous glare directed at Imani, a promise of future revenge burning in his eyes, he retreated hastily. He hurried across the lot, climbed into his own beat-up truck, and sped away, leaving the sudden, oppressive silence in his wake. Imani slumped against the headrest, her body shaking violently, the adrenaline crash leaving her utterly depleted. She had been rescued, but the shame of being so publicly fragile, so completely ruined, felt unbearable. Elias tapped softly on the window. Slowly, Imani rolled it down. Her face was a wreck of mascara and misery. "Thank you," she managed, the word a pathetic croak. Elias didn't offer pity, only practicality. "I think you need to get those children somewhere safe and warm immediately. And you need something to eat. I was waiting for my ride, but I can easily call you a taxi and pay for a meal. Where can I send you?" He spoke with a quiet kindness that felt worse than his earlier sternness. It was the kindness of a stranger helping a stray. Imani shook her head, clutching the steering wheel. She couldn't accept charity from him. "I don't need charity, Mr. Vaughn. I just needed him gone. I'll take my girls home." "Home?" he asked gently, his eyes briefly sweeping over her car's dented fender and the exhaustion in her eyes. "You clearly aren't in a state to drive, and those little ones shouldn't be subjected to any more stress tonight. Let me just get you a meal voucher for a place near your house. Please, let me do this small thing." His insistence was polite but firm. Reluctantly, Imani relented, too tired to argue. "Fine. A taxi then," she whispered. "My house is on Ashbury Avenue." Elias nodded, reaching into his immaculate jacket for his phone. As he did, Imani finally lifted her gaze beyond his shoulder, taking in the grand entrance to the restaurant, the one she had been so excited to enter just an hour ago. The name, etched in elegant brass on the stone facade, suddenly registered, the Belvedere. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just a random fancy restaurant. This was the high-end establishment her friends had described, the place where she was supposed to meet Elias Vaughn for their blind date. She looked back at Elias, who was mid-call, his face etched with concern, and the ultimate, horrifying truth slammed into her. He had canceled their date, not because of an emergency, but because he had already seen her. He had seen her at her lowest, broken moment, weeping uncontrollably in her car, battling her cruel ex-husband, and he had decided she wasn't worth the trouble. The reality was a fresh, excruciating wound. The blood rushed to Imani's face, scalding her cheeks with a heat far more intense than her earlier tears. Her humiliation was absolute. He hadn't just seen her broken. He had seen the broken thing that he, Elias Vaughn, had rightfully rejected. The text message saying he had an emergency was clearly a lie, a polite escape from the volatile, miserable display he'd witnessed. And now, he was offering to pay for a taxi, a charitable gesture to the spectacle he'd avoided dating. Her pride, already battered and bruised, flared up with a desperate intensity. She yanked her hand back from the car door. "I see," she said, her voice dangerously steady, masking the seismic shift of emotion inside her. "You are Elias, and I was your date. Now I understand emergency." Elias paused in his phone call, his expression shifting from concern to a deep, unreadable regret. He ended the call quickly and focused completely on her. "Imani, please, let me explain. When I saw the scene, the confrontation, the tears, I realized this wasn't the way for us to meet. It was too much. You were in distress, and I couldn't in good conscience sit down for dinner knowing what you were facing outside." "No, Mr. Vaughn. You realized you didn't want that," Imani countered, nodding toward her wrecked face and the fear still lingering in her daughter's eyes. "And you were right. I am not the successful, composed woman your profile must have suggested. I am a mess. So please, take your charity and leave. We don't need it." The refusal felt like a physical wrench, tearing away the last lifeline she had, but she couldn't stand the thought of accepting his help now. Elias stepped back, respecting the boundary she had harshly drawn. "I understand your anger, Imani, but it changes nothing about what I'm seeing now. Your daughters haven't eaten properly. They look tired and scared." He didn't look at her. He looked directly at Aisha and Kira, who were peeking up nervously. "I know a great place just 5 minutes from here. It's not the Belvedere. It's just a simple burger joint. Ray's Diner. No pretense, just food. Let me drive you there, get them a hot meal, and then I'll send you home. No strings, no conversation, just human decency." The mention of Ray's Diner, a place she knew was cheap and reliable, was a gentle tactic that bypassed her pride and appealed directly to her motherhood. Her girls hadn't had a proper dinner. Her stomach twisted with guilt. She looked into the rearview mirror at Aisha, whose small face was pinched with hunger. Imani finally broke. "Fine," she sighed, defeated but unwilling to admit her vulnerability. "But you are not paying for the food. I have $5 left." "I'll accept that compromise," Elias said, a faint hint of relief in his voice. "Now, let's get this thing started and dash." Imani turned the key. Nothing. She tried again. The engine of the old sedan groaned, a painful, metallic sound, and then fell silent. The dashboard lights flickered weakly before dying altogether. The air conditioning sputtered into nothingness, and the heavy, summer heat instantly pressed in. Imani's last, desperate hope of maintaining control evaporated. This wasn't just a low battery. This was a complete, final technical failure, happening at the absolute worst moment, stranding them in the dark lot with the man who had canceled her. It was the universe confirming her utter defeat. Elias watched the dead dashboard with a neutral expression that Imani found infinitely frustrating. It wasn't pity, but a calm assessment of a problem, like looking at a broken machine. "Well," he said simply, "I suppose the taxi is off the table, and this is clearly more than a jump start. It's also getting dark, and you are stranded in a high-traffic lot. We are not leaving you here." He looked over at the terrified faces of Aisha and Kira in the back seat, their eyes wide and fixed on him. "My driver is still en route to pick me up, but I can cancel him. I have my car here. I will drive you." Imani felt a desperate panic surge. Accepting a taxi was one thing. Getting into a strange billionaire's personal vehicle with her children was another. "Absolutely not," she declared, trying to sound firm despite the shake in her voice. "We can call a friend. We can wait for a tow truck." "Wait where?" "In the parking lot. Being harassed again by your ex-husband when he inevitably returns? Your children are hungry, Imani. I am offering a safe, immediate solution. I will drive you to Ray's Diner. You can have your $5 worth of food, and then I will drive you straight to Ashbury Avenue. I am not some monster. I am trying to help." His voice was low and reasonable, crushing her arguments with cold logic. Defeated, and realizing the children's welfare outweighed her pride and paranoia, Imani unlocked the doors. Elias politely ushered her daughters into the back of his sleek, silent black sedan, a vehicle that smelled of new leather and impossible wealth, before she numbly slid into the passenger seat. The drive was quiet, heavy with unspoken tension. Aisha, initially terrified, was quickly captivated by the large, glowing screen on the back of the headrest, which Elias had silently activated to play a cartoon. Kira, nestled beside her sister, slowly stopped sniffling and eventually leaned her head against the plush seat, already half asleep. This small, unexpected comfort chipped away at Imani's defensive wall. She risked a glance at Elias, whose hands rested easily on the wheel. He looked nothing like the opportunistic men she usually encountered. He looked weary, perhaps, but fundamentally decent. She couldn't help but think of what had brought them here, to this moment of absolute dependency. A flashback to 6 months ago, the moment her life had truly begun its downward spiral. It wasn't just Tyrone's betrayal. It was the sudden, crippling illness of her elderly mother, Edna, requiring expensive home care that quickly devoured her savings. Then came the unexpected layoff from her job at the nonprofit, a job she'd held for 10 years. The crushing cycle of medical bills, unemployment, and Tyrone's debt had pushed them to the brink. Imani had cashed out the last of her emergency fund just to keep the lights on, and had been so desperate for a fresh start that she'd agreed to this blind date. The shame of her situation was a physical knot in her chest. "You look tired, Imani," Elias remarked, startling her from her thoughts. "Don't worry about the car. I'll have someone tow it tomorrow and arrange for an estimate." "I told you, I don't need charity," she whispered, looking straight ahead, expecting to see the bright neon sign of Ray's Diner any second. But they kept driving. They passed the familiar corner, and Ray's bright, inviting sign flashed in the opposite direction. Imani's heart began to hammer a frantic rhythm. "Mr. Vaughn, you missed the turn." The diner was back there. Elias kept his eyes on the road, turning onto a wide, tree-lined avenue that quickly became darker and more exclusive. The houses here were mansions, set far back from the road behind imposing gates. "I changed my mind," he stated calmly, his voice devoid of emotion. "I can't feed you properly at a fast food place, and I won't drop you off at a place that might still be within reach of your ex-husband. We're going to my home, Blackwood Manor. It's the only place I can ensure your safety and provide a proper meal tonight." Imani watched in rising panic as the car slowed before a towering, wrought iron gate that opened with a low, hydraulic sigh, admitting them to the massive, intimidating, and utterly unfamiliar estate of Elias Vaughn. The iron gates of Blackwood Manor closed behind the sedan with a profound, almost final thud, sealing them inside a world Imani had only ever seen in movies. Her panic, initially a dull thrum, now roared to life. She was a mother, driving her 2 vulnerable children into the home of a stranger, a billionaire stranger she had met 30 minutes ago during her deepest moment of despair. Her heart felt trapped in her throat. "Mr. Vaughn, you need to turn around right now," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "I can't be here. This is wrong. You said a meal. Not this." Elias parked the car in the cavernous circular drive, the sprawling stone mansion looming over them, lit by discreet, golden spotlights. He turned in his seat, his gaze steady and calm. "Imani, please look at me. Your car is dead. Your ex-husband is a menace. I am not asking for anything. I just want to ensure that for tonight, you and the girls are safe, fed, and warm. That is my only motivation. My staff is discreet and professional. I am not trying to lure you. I am trying to help you survive this moment." He spoke with such convincing sincerity that some of Imani's fear began to recede, replaced by a weary exhaustion. Before she could argue further, the door opened. A woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, dressed in a crisp uniform, stepped forward. "Welcome, Mr. Vaughn, and welcome to the young ladies and their mother. We have a small meal prepared in the breakfast nook." The woman, who introduced herself as Eleanor, said softly. She moved immediately to the back seat, speaking directly to Aisha and Kira. "I have warm blankets and some hot chocolate waiting. Would you like to come inside with me? I think we might have some silly cartoons on the television, too." The genuine warmth of Eleanor was undeniable. She didn't treat Imani like a beggar or a burden. She treated them like honored, if unexpected, guests. The children, sensing the immediate shift from their mother's tension to this quiet, safe environment, let Eleanor lead them away. Imani watched them go, a small, painful lump easing in her chest. For the first time in months, her children looked truly secure. Elias led Imani to a quiet, elegant sitting room. The silence was absolute, a powerful contrast to the chaotic noise of her life. He poured her a glass of water. "Sit down, Imani. Let them eat and rest. We can talk about tomorrow later." Imani sank onto the plush sofa, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She was overwhelmed by the opulence, but even more by the temporary peace. She could hear the faint, happy murmur of her daughter's voices from the kitchen, a sound she hadn't heard nearly enough recently. This brief sanctuary was priceless. Just as a sliver of hope dared to surface, her phone vibrated sharply on the small table beside her. It was an unrecognized number. Hesitantly, Imani picked it up. It was a text message, short and chilling, but undeniably from Tyrone. He must have used a burner phone or a friend's device. "Enjoy your rich man's bed, Imani. You won't enjoy seeing what I just filed on the house. Consider yourself homeless tomorrow. And I'm taking the girls. Don't think you can hide from me." Imani's hand started shaking so violently that the phone clattered against the glass table. The extreme event had returned, shattering the peace. Tyrone wasn't just threatening her. He was taking action. He had filed something legal regarding their last shared asset, the dilapidated house that was all she had left, and he was using her unexpected night at Elias's manor as fresh leverage. Imani looked up at Elias, her eyes wide with fresh terror, realizing that the one night of safety had just cost her everything. Imani thrust the phone toward Elias, her hand still trembling violently. The fragile peace of the manor was instantly shattered by the venom of Tyrone's text. "He means it, Elias. He's taking the house. That's all we have left. We have nowhere to go." The dam finally broke, not in sobs, but in a torrent of furious, desperate confession. The relief of being rescued vanished, replaced by the acute, searing need to explain everything, to make this powerful man understand the true depths of the hole she was in. "My mother, Edna, she needs round-the-clock care. The nursing home costs, they're astronomical. And Tyrone knew that." Imani began, her voice raw. "He didn't just leave me for another woman, Serafina. He systematically drained our accounts. He took my late father's life insurance payout. He used forged documents to pull out the equity in the house to fund some ludicrous crypto scheme, and then he just walked away, leaving me with the default notices and the debt collectors. I lost my job because I was too busy fighting him and caring for my mother. This date, Elias, was my desperate attempt to find a lifeboat, not a sugar daddy, a partner, someone stable, before the wave completely swallowed us." She spoke until her throat was dry and raw, laying out the ugly timeline of betrayal, divorce trauma, and the fight for her children's future, the whole miserable truth exposed under the chandelier lights of the manor. Elias listened, silent and unmoving, his expression growing steadily darker, not with judgment, but with an intense focus. When she finally fell silent, collapsing back onto the sofa, exhausted by the sheer act of revelation, he took a slow breath. "My first wife, Vivian, passed away suddenly 5 years ago," he shared, his voice distant and measured, a less extreme counterpoint to Imani's trauma. "But before that, there was a betrayal of trust one haven't forgotten. Not financial, but personal. She was running a foundation in our name, and I discovered she had been systematically diverting funds to people she preferred, friends, family, and not to the causes we'd established. It was a betrayal of our shared vision, our name, and everything I thought we built together. It taught me that trust is the most expensive commodity in the world, and I've been slow to give it since." He met her eyes, a flicker of genuine connection passing between them. "What you went through, Imani, is a different kind of theft, but the damage to the soul is the same. I believe you, and I want to help." Just as those words of support settled between them, a sudden, urgent ringtone cut the silence. Elias checked the screen. It was Bartholomew Bart Finch, his head legal counsel. Elias answered, his professional demeanor instantly snapping into place. He listened for only 30 seconds, his eyes widening almost imperceptibly as the color drained from his face. He ended the call and looked at Imani, his jaw tight. Bart was looking into Tyrone's recent filings. Elias began, his voice barely above a whisper, heavy with the weight of truly devastating information. He found the paperwork Tyrone filed regarding the house and the mortgage. It wasn't just a standard default notice or a claim on equity. Tyrone didn't just walk away from the debt. He executed a predatory, short sale scheme with a shell company to quickly strip the house's deed and leave you responsible for the remaining mortgage balance while he pocketed the quick cash. Elias paused, shaking his head. That's bad. But there's a new extreme to this betrayal, Imani. Bart found evidence, an unsigned deed of trust, that indicates Tyrone was also attempting to seize control of your mother, Edna's, assets and potentially influence her medical care decisions for profit. Your mother's nursing home care. Tyrone has been maneuvering to control that too. The devastating secret about Edna's assets hit Imani harder than the loss of the house. That Tyrone would stoop so low as to use his own mother-in-law's vulnerability for profit was a level of cruelty Imani hadn't imagined. Her terror now morphed into a cold, clear rage, not just for herself, but for her mother and her girls. He can't, she whispered, shaking her head. He can't touch my mother's care. We have to stop him. Elias, who had already called his legal team back into action, sat across from her. Bart is already preparing the necessary injunctions, he assured her, his voice low and firm. We need a new strategy, Imani. This isn't just a divorce. This is a clear-cut case of financial elder abuse and fraudulent conveyance. We will not just defend you. We will launch an attack to legally expose and defeat Tyrone, ensuring he can never come near your family's finances again. This was the declaration of a new battle, a shift from passive victimhood to aggressive retaliation, backed by the immense power of Elias Vaughn's resources. As the legal wheels began grinding late into the night, the urgency momentarily subsided, giving way to a strange, almost surreal calm. Elias's housekeeper, Eleanor, brought them late-night coffee, strong, dark, and exactly what Imani needed. Sitting in the quiet grandeur of the library, surrounded by leather-bound books and the gentle sounds of her children sleeping safely upstairs, Imani and Elias began to strategize. It was a quiet, intense period of bonding, a less extreme moment of two people connecting over a shared enemy and a mutual sense of justice. Imani detailed the financial paper trail, the dates of Tyrone's withdrawals, and the names of the shady characters he'd associated with. Elias, in turn, explained the legal maneuvers Bart was planning. They were partners in war, sitting side by side, united by the glow of a tablet screen and the deep shadows of the library. You should know, Imani, that once we start this, Tyrone will fight dirty, Elias warned her. He'll attack you publicly. He'll use my involvement to paint you as a gold digger. Let him, Imani said. Her eyes hardened. I'm done being afraid of him. He gave me nothing to lose. Elias smiled faintly, a genuine, appreciative expression. Good. The next morning, fortified by their planning, Elias insisted on driving Imani and the girls to pick up some urgent clothes and supplies from her current rental apartment. They were driving Elias's unmarked SUV, hoping for discretion. As they neared the modest apartment complex, Imani spotted the familiar, sleek car of Lorena Vance, a wealthy, high-society figure and a longtime acquaintance of Elias's, who was also a friend of Tyrone's current mistress, Serafina. Lorena was known for her gossip column and her cruel social commentary. Imani tried to duck down, but it was too late. Lorena, dressed in a spotless white suit, was standing by the apartment complex entrance, talking loudly on her phone. She spotted the imposing black SUV and, recognizing Elias, strode over immediately, tapping sharply on his window. Elias sighed and rolled it down. Elias, darling, I heard you canceled your date last night for an emergency, Lorena purred, though her eyes were narrowed in assessment. She then spotted Imani, still disheveled and clutching a battered tote bag, sitting next to him. Lorena's smile became a sneer. Oh, I see the emergency. A charity case. Or is this the pathetic woman whose husband is currently filing for bankruptcy and exposing her debt to the entire city? Serafina told me all about the drama. Really, Elias, slumming it with a woman who has no job and too little accessories? A poor choice, even for you. Your reputation is going to take a hit assisting this kind of domestic mess. Lorena delivered the insult with chilling precision, her voice dripping with pure social contempt, delivering a new extreme of public humiliation. Elias's jaw tightened as Lorena Vance's cruel words hung in the air, but Imani, surprisingly, didn't flinch. Lorena's contempt was the final piece of coal, hardening Imani into steel. My reputation is my own business, Lorena, Elias stated, his voice a low, chilling reprimand that brooked no argument. As for Imani, she is a guest and a client. Unlike some, I prefer to align myself with decency. Now, if you'll excuse us. He rolled the window up slowly, deliberately cutting off Lorena's sputtered response. The humiliation had been sharp, but Imani felt something different now, a fierce resolve. Inside the SUV, the mood was one of cold determination. Elias pulled away from the curb and spoke, his eyes focused on the windshield. That woman represents everything that thrives on misery. We're going to dismantle Tyrone's entire scheme, Imani. My team has already filed the restraining order based on his text and the threat to your mother's assets. This is not about getting back at him. This is a revenge/redemption plan. It's about protecting what's yours and ensuring Tyrone faces the legal consequences of his elder abuse and fraud. Elias was using his immense power to shield and defend her, turning the tables completely. Over the next few hours, as they gathered Imani's remaining possessions, mostly toys, a few legal documents, and clothes, Imani felt a powerful internal shift. The consuming rage she'd felt toward Tyrone started to dissipate, replaced by a quiet, deep focus on her own future. She wasn't fighting for revenge. She was fighting for her redemption. This was a less extreme moment of inner growth, a realization that the real victory wasn't seeing Tyrone suffer, but achieving stability for Aisha and Kira. She meticulously organized the documents for Elias's lawyers, recognizing that every piece of paper was a step toward independence. She made a vow. She would never again allow fear or financial desperation to control her choices. She embraced the idea of fighting for her future. They had just finished loading the last box, a container of the girls' favorite picture books, into the trunk of Elias's SUV. Imani was securing Aisha and Kira into the back seat. The girls, exhausted but relieved to have their things, were giggling softly. Imani was just about to slide into the passenger seat when a rusted-out pickup truck screeched into the narrow parking space beside them. It was Tyrone. He must have been staking out the place, waiting for the perfect opportunity. His face was contorted with fury, his eyes wild and desperate. The restraining order had clearly enraged him further. He didn't speak, he acted. He launched himself out of the truck, moving with terrifying speed, and lunged toward the SUV's open rear door. "You think you can just leave, Imani? You think you can take my family?" he bellowed, his voice raw. In a horrifying escalation, a new extreme of violence, Tyrone yanked the door open, ignoring the children's terrified screams. He reached inside, grabbing Kira's arm, attempting to forcibly take her out of the car. "You're coming with me, baby girl. Your mother is sick." Imani screamed, instantly throwing herself between Tyrone and her daughter, clawing at his arms, her protective instinct overriding all fear. The battle turned brutal and immediate, a struggle for her child's safety unfolding violently in the middle of a quiet apartment parking lot. Imani was locked in a primal, desperate struggle with Tyrone, her voice hoarse from screaming, her arms burning as she fought to keep her daughter, Kira, secured inside the vehicle. Tyrone was a heavy man fueled by manic desperation. He yanked and pulled, the sheer force threatening to rip Kira from Imani's grasp. Aisha was wailing hysterically, and the terrifying scene felt like it was moving in slow motion under the pale, late-afternoon light. Suddenly, a voice like thunder, yet utterly controlled, ripped through the chaos. "Security! Get him off the vehicle immediately." It was Elias. He had been on a call a few steps away, finalizing the towing arrangements for Imani's dead car, but he had sprinted across the parking lot the second the confrontation began. He didn't engage Tyrone directly. Instead, two large, impeccably dressed men, who Imani realized must be Elias's discreet private security detail, emerged from a nearby, unassuming black sedan. They moved with swift, clinical efficiency. Before Tyrone could react, one man had him pinned against the truck, and the other was instantly between him and the SUV door. Tyrone roared in frustration and humiliation, realizing he was utterly overpowered and exposed. Elias walked calmly to the door, pulled the terrified Kira into Imani's tight embrace, and checked the little girl for injuries. He didn't speak to Tyrone, only giving the security detail a curt nod. "Detain him until the local police arrive," Elias commanded. "He has violated a restraining order and attempted assault." This was the end of the standoff. Tyrone's pathetic, sputtering protestations were meaningless against Elias's cold, legal authority. Imani held her daughters close, rocking them until their sobs subsided into trembling gasps. Later that evening, back in the quiet sanctuary of Blackwood Manor, after the police report was filed and Tyrone was taken into custody, the atmosphere was soft and restorative. It was a less extreme period of recovery. Elias, still dressed formally, sat with Imani in the sitting room. Aisha and Kira, still slightly rattled, were draped over the sofa, watching a quiet movie. "Mr. Vaughn, thank you," Aisha said suddenly, her small voice cutting through the silence. She slowly walked over to Elias and tentatively reached out, touching his expensive suit jacket. You made the bad man go away. You're our protector. Kira echoed the sentiment with a small, heartfelt nod, cuddling Elias's hand. Elias looked down at the girls, and Imani witnessed the mask of the powerful businessman finally crack. A genuine, profound tenderness softened his features. He gently brushed Aisha's hair back. I'm glad I could help, little one. You are safe now. Imani watched this exchange, realizing the depth of his character. He wasn't just wealthy. He was genuinely empathetic. However, the precariousness of their situation was never far. As Imani sat down to check her email, hoping to find a supportive message from a friend, a new notification popped up. Not an email, but an official document from the court system. Her stomach dropped as she clicked on the link. It was a formal court summons. The document stated that Tyrone had, before his capture, filed a motion for an emergency hearing, demanding immediate and full custody of Aisha and Kira. The claim was venomous and entirely fabricated. He alleged that Imani was financially unstable, mentally unfit, and currently living with a stranger in an unregulated environment that posed a danger to the children. The text of the motion explicitly referenced her lack of employment and the canceled date. The notification of the new extreme, a custody battle based on lies, was a sharp, legal blow that threatened to take away the one thing Imani could never lose: her children. The court summons for emergency custody was the sharpest threat yet, targeting the very core of Imani's existence: her children. Elias, however, reacted not with panic, but with the cold, calculated efficiency of a general facing battle. This was the opening salvo of the legal war. This is exactly what he wanted, Elias stated, reviewing the documents. To use his fabricated claims and your dependency on me to paint a narrative of neglect. But we will bury him in truth. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of courtroom drama prep. Elias mobilized his vast resources. Bart Finch and his team, the best lawyers in the city, descended upon Blackwood Manor. Imani spent hours with them, meticulously detailing every instance of Tyrone's financial abuse, providing bank records, dates of betrayal, and documenting the harassment. Forensic accountants worked around the clock, tracing the shell companies and fraudulent conveyances Tyrone had used to strip the house equity. The manor, once a sanctuary, now buzzed with the quiet, intense activity of a high-stakes legal operation, turning every lie Tyrone had built into a mountain of incriminating evidence. Amidst the legal chaos, Imani found a small, personal moment of less extreme but profound growth. With the children safe and her immediate housing crisis solved, she finally had the mental space to breathe. Elias's team had found her old college transcripts and her certifications. Imani had always dreamed of being a pediatric nurse, a career she had put on hold to raise her family and support Tyrone's failed ambitions. Now, Elias's head of HR, Marcus, helped her refresh her resume and connect with local hospital recruiters. She began studying late into the night, the sheer focus of pursuing her old career dream a powerful antidote to the years of fear and self-doubt. Imani wasn't just relying on Elias for rescue. She was actively rebuilding her self-worth, a future where she was financially independent and professionally fulfilled. But the legal team's deep dive yielded a revelation far darker than anything Imani had prepared for. Bart Finch called a meeting, his expression grim. Imani, we found a money trail. Tyrone didn't just fraudulently convey the house. He also manipulated your mother's power of attorney. Imani felt a chill crawl up her spine. I signed that over to him temporarily when I was sick years ago. I thought I revoked it. You did, Bart confirmed. But he created a new, updated version with a forged signature, right before Edna's memory started to fade. He then used that fraudulent document to redirect a substantial portion of the funds intended for your mother's current, high-quality nursing home care. He planned to move her to a cheaper, substandard facility, pocketing the difference, and tying up her assets to make them unavailable to you. This wasn't just theft. This was calculated cruelty toward a vulnerable elder. This was the final, ultimate evidence of Tyrone's deep betrayal, a new extreme that proved his malice extended beyond financial ruin to the potential physical harm and neglect of her sick mother. This changed everything. The fight was no longer just about the girls, but about bringing a truly monstrous crime to light. The revelation about the fraudulent power of attorney and Tyrone's attempt to plunder her mother's nursing home funds was a bomb dropped directly onto Imani's conscience. She paced Elias's vast library, the polished floor reflecting her turmoil. This final, devastating secret was the key to absolutely destroying Tyrone in court, ensuring he was stripped not just of his custody claim, but perhaps even facing jail time for fraud and elder abuse. But the price felt too high. "He is still the father of my children, Elias," Imani whispered, the words tasting like ash. "If we use this, if we expose him for trying to harm his mother-in-law, he will be ruined, completely ruined, and my daughters will have to live with the knowledge that their father is a criminal." I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice for the girls, not to be the architect of their father's downfall. This was the moral dilemma, a painful knot of conflicting emotions that threatened to unravel her resolve. Elias approached her slowly, his usual crisp demeanor softened by quiet intensity. This was the less extreme but crucial moment of guidance. He didn't dismiss her feelings. He acknowledged the pain of the decision. "I understand the conflict, Imani, but this is not about revenge. This is about truth and protection. Tyrone himself chose this path when he targeted an elderly, vulnerable woman for profit. His downfall is a consequence of his actions, not yours. More importantly, if he is allowed to walk free, even with a loss of custody, he will find another way to haunt you, to steal from you, to threaten your children's stability. This evidence is the only thing that ensures your daughter's safety and future independence, a clean break. Justice for Edna is justice for Aisha and Kira." His logic was sound, his emphasis on the girl's future finally tipping the scales for Imani. She hardened her heart, resolving to prioritize her mother and children over Tyrone's reputation. The morning of the emergency custody hearing arrived, heavy with oppressive tension. Imani, dressed in a simple but sharp suit Elias's staff had procured, rode with Elias and Bart Finch to the courthouse. Her hands were clammy, but her resolve, guided by Elias's quiet strength, felt solid. Entering the sterile, fluorescent-lit courtroom, Imani felt every eye on her. She took her seat beside Bart, trying to project a calmness she didn't feel. Then she saw him. Tyrone was already sitting at the defense table, his cheap suit pressed, a look of nauseating self-satisfaction plastered across his face. He had clearly managed to secure temporary release, and was already brimming with arrogance. He looked directly at Imani, tilting his head back slightly, his lips curling into a wide, ugly grin. He was acting smug, convinced he had played the system perfectly. He believed his fabricated claims and Imani's temporary living situation were enough to win the custody battle and maintain control. Imani instantly understood the silent message he was sending. "You're poor, you're dependent, and I'm going to win." The sight of his smug and overly confident demeanor, even after his attempted violence, was a fresh, infuriating extreme that solidified Imani's decision. There would be no mercy. The courtroom air was thick and charged, a silent arena for the clash of truth and fabrication. Tyrone's defense lawyer, hired with the last scraps of money he'd bilked, started aggressively, painting Imani as a neglectful mother chasing a billionaire, using her poverty as proof of her unfitness. But when it was Bart Finch's turn, the atmosphere shifted. Bart didn't grandstand. He simply introduced the evidence. First, he presented the financial records of the home equity fraud, complete with trace transfers to Tyrone's shell corporations. The judge's expression hardened. Then came the dramatic court hearing climax, the presentation of the fabricated power of attorney and the bank records, proving Tyrone's systematic redirection of his mother-in-law's nursing home funds. Bart detailed, with chilling precision, how Tyrone's actions weren't just theft, but a calculated endangerment of an elderly woman. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Tyrone's face, which had moments ago been smug, drained to a sickly gray. He looked like a trapped animal, his lawyer scrambling to object, but the evidence was irrefutable. Imani watched as the foundation of lies Tyrone had built over years crumbled around him. The judge called a short recess, the sheer weight of the evidence demanding immediate consideration. When court resumed, the verdict was swift and decisive. The judge not only denied Tyrone's emergency motion for custody, but granted Imani a temporary, permanent restraining order against him, citing his fraudulent behavior and the proven threat to Edna's welfare. Tyrone had lost everything, his downfall complete and utterly public. As the gravity of the ruling settled, and Tyrone was swiftly escorted away, Imani lifted her eyes. Across the wide expanse of the room, standing discreetly by the back door, was Elias. He hadn't been required to testify, but he had remained, a silent anchor. For a less extreme moment, they locked eyes. It wasn't a glance of triumph or pity, but a profound, quiet acknowledgement, a confirmation of their connection. In that intense eye contact, Imani saw not just a rescuer, but a partner who believed in her justice, and Elias saw not a victim, but a fierce survivor. But the day was not over. Just minutes after the hearing concluded, As Imani, Bart, and Elias were gathered in a private room discussing the next steps, Bart's phone buzzed repeatedly. He looked up, his expression horrified. Elias, Imani, you need to see this. He turned his screen toward them, displaying a live feed from a notorious online gossip site. Tyrone, completely unhinged and desperate for a final act of malice before being officially processed, had contacted the lowest rung of the press. The headline screamed a vile distortion of reality. Billionaire's new conquest, single mother Imani Hayes exposed. Secret past reveals she was arrested for petty theft years ago. The shocking truth behind her poverty. The story that followed was a venomous exaggeration of a minor incident from Imani's desperate youth. A youthful mistake of shoplifting she had long since paid for and expunged. Tyrone had weaponized her past, throwing a deeply personal, humiliating secret about Imani to the press. This new extreme of vengeful exposure was intended to destroy her reputation and Elias's credibility, ensuring that even in his defeat, Tyrone inflicted maximum emotional damage. Imani felt the room spin. She was free of the law, but now she faced a brutal, public trial. The public exposure of Imani's past, however minor and long ago, exploded across social media and the tabloids. The headlines were vicious, portraying her as a manipulative former thief, now attempting to exploit an honorable billionaire. The humiliation was immediate and brutal. Comment sections were filled with vitriol, accusing her of being a calculated fraud. For the first time since the verdict, Imani felt truly broken again, not by Tyrone's actions, but by the relentless, cruel judgment of strangers. The backlash threatened to overshadow the justice they had won. Elias, however, was an absolute rock. He immediately released a statement through his communications director, not denying Imani's past, but contextualizing it with firm clarity, emphasizing her single mother status, her current legal victory, and Tyrone's documented elder abuse. He stood by her side unshakable. Their slander is the last dying cry of a defeated man, Imani, Elias told her calmly. It's noise. We treat it as such. We focus on the truth and on your future. This unwavering support gave Imani the courage she desperately needed. She realized that trying to hide was only validating the lie. In a less extreme but profoundly powerful moment of self-redemption, she agreed to do one controlled interview with the reputable national news outlet, a chance to seize her own narrative. Looking directly into the camera, her voice clear and resonant, she addressed the accusations. Yes, she said. When I was 19 and facing true desperation and hunger, I made a mistake. I paid the price for it, and I moved on. That mistake doesn't define me, just as being betrayed doesn't define me. What defines me is the fight for my children, the love for my mother, and the decision to always choose kindness and empathy over malice. She delivered an empowering message about finding strength not in perfection, but in resilience, refusing to be defined by a broken past. The authenticity of her message, backed by the documented evidence of Tyrone's cruelty, began to shift the public tide, turning the story from one of scandal to one of courageous survival. Later that evening, the tension of the day settled. Elias led Imani into his study, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken questions about their future. Imani, he began, serious and formal. You are an incredibly strong woman, and you deserve more than to be a guest in my home. You deserve security, stability, and genuine independence. I understand that the idea of a romantic relationship, especially now, might feel transactional. Imani nodded, appreciating his frankness. She still felt overwhelming gratitude, but her focus was firmly on standing on her own feet. Therefore, Elias continued, leaning forward, I have instructed Bart to draw up paperwork for a different kind of arrangement. We will establish a nonprofit foundation focusing on legal aid for victims of elder financial abuse, something that honors your mother. I want to install you as the executive director. It's a competitive salary, full benefits, and a mission you are uniquely suited for. I am offering you a non-romantic business partnership, a way to secure your long-term independence while doing powerful good. This was the new extreme, not a marriage proposal, but an offer of profound professional empowerment, giving her the platform and the power to control her destiny completely. Imani looked at Elias, the weight of his offer, the position as executive director of a new foundation, settling over her. It wasn't a handout. It was a launch pad, a testament to her strength. It was the key to the independence she had fought so desperately for. A slow, genuine smile spread across her face. Elias, she said, her voice rich with gratitude and a newfound self-respect. I accept the partnership. This mission, Helping people like my mother and me is everything I've needed. Thank you for seeing my worth beyond my disaster." She walked over to the desk where he was sitting, her eyes meeting his. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But you mentioned a possible romantic arrangement earlier. If that was ever going to become a marriage proposal or anything close to it, I would have to decline for now." Elias looked surprised, but he nodded slowly, his respect for her visibly deepening. "Why?" he asked gently. "Because I need to stand on my own," Imani explained, her chest swelling with empowerment. "I need to build this foundation, buy my own home for my children, and prove to myself, and to the world, that I am not defined by Tyrone or by rescue. When I walk into a true partnership with you, Elias, it won't be as a dependent. It will be as an equal, and that starts today." He reached out and gently took her hand, a powerful bond of respect solidifying between them, far stronger than any whirlwind romance could have created. Years later, the change was profound. Imani Hayes Vaughn was now a nationally recognized advocate, a powerful voice in elder justice reform. Her foundation, funded substantially by Elias but managed independently by her, had successfully prosecuted several cases of financial elder abuse, securing justice and stability for countless families. She was independent, successful, and radiated a quiet, steady confidence. She had bought a beautiful home for her daughters, now thriving teenagers, and her mother, Edna, who received the best care available. One crisp autumn evening, a sleek, black sedan pulled into the very same luxury restaurant parking lot, the Belvedere, where this story began. The event was a gala honoring Imani for her work. As the couple stepped out, they were met by the soft, warm glow of the evening lights. Elias, distinguished and handsome, held her hand. They both paused, looking at the exact spot where her old sedan had died and where she had been seen weeping in despair. "Look at us," Elias murmured, squeezing her hand. "Partners in life, partners in business. I remember looking at that car and seeing only despair. Now I see the genesis of everything we've built." They exchanged a deep, loving smile, a poetic, powerful closing to the chaos they had survived. As they began to walk toward the brightly lit entrance, Imani paused, placing her free hand gently over her tailored suit jacket, which discreetly concealed a slight curve she hadn't had before. She looked up at Elias, her eyes twinkling with a sudden, overwhelming joy, the final twist. "Before we go inside, Mr. Vaughn," she whispered, her voice husky with happy tears, "there's one more thing you should know. I think our foundation might need a junior executive in about 6 months." Elias stopped dead, the realization washing over his face in slow motion. He stared at her hand, then at her radiant, peaceful smile. "Imani," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "It's true," she confirmed, laughing softly. "Our future, Elias, isn't just built on justice and independence. It's built on genuine love." He swept her into a careful, tender embrace right there in the parking lot. A final, absolute declaration that their life together, which started with betrayal and tears, was finally complete and filled with the promise of true, deep happiness.